For 2 whole years, America basically sat on the sidelines while the world was tearing itself apart in World War II. The mood here? Overwhelmingly isolationist. So what changed? What could possibly be so powerful, so shocking, that it could drag a nation that wanted nothing to do with the war right into the middle of the biggest conflict in human history? Well, it all comes down to one single day. A date that would, as they say, live in infamy. Let's get into it.
Yeah, those are the words from President Franklin D. Roosevelt that pretty much everyone knows. And this picture, this is the image that was seared into the American consciousness. The USS Arizona, just consumed by fire. In one single moment, everything changed. But, and this is key, it didn't just come out of nowhere.
So, let's paint a picture. It's a peaceful, quiet Sunday morning. We're at the American Naval Base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. For most of the sailors and soldiers there, it's a day off. They're asleep, they're relaxing. The United States is, officially, a nation at peace.
And you have to remember, at this point, World War II had already been raging for 2 years. Nazi Germany had swallowed up most of Western Europe. Britain was getting pummeled by bombs day in and day out. But the United States, we hadn't sent a single soldier to fight. And then, on this one quiet Sunday morning, all of that changed in an instant.
Now, to most Americans at the time, this attack felt completely random, like it came out of the clear blue sky. But the truth is, it didn't. The road to this moment was actually decades in the making. So to really get the why behind it, we've got to go back, way back.
Okay, so let's talk about Japan's motivations. We really can't understand them without looking at this incredible and incredibly fast transformation the country went through. They went from being this isolated, feudal society to a full-blown modern, industrial, and imperial power with some serious global ambitions of its own.
Just take a look at this timeline. It's kind of wild. It all kicks off in 1853, and get this, it's the US that forces Japan to open its doors to the world. And from there, things just explode. The Meiji Restoration starts this breakneck modernization. We're talking a few short decades, and suddenly, Japan has a top-tier modern military. Fast forward to the 1930s, and Japan is desperate for natural resources. Things their islands just don't have. So they start expanding, first into Manchuria, and then it becomes a full-scale invasion of China.
And this is what's so fascinating, right? The core motivation. Japan's leaders, especially the military guys who were gaining more and more power, were looking around at the world. They saw what the Western powers, Britain, France, the US, had been doing for centuries, building huge empires by colonizing other people. So in their minds, they were just playing the same game. They were claiming their spot at the table as an equal power.
Well, you can probably guess what happened next. That kind of ambition was bound to put Japan on a collision course with the other big player in the Pacific, the United States. And things between them got tense, fast.
You can literally see the back-and-forth escalation right here. First, Japan moves into French Indochina. The US fires back by sending more aid to China. But step 3, that's the real game changer. The US completely cuts off oil sales to Japan. For a country with a huge military and a hungry industrial economy, that's not just a slap on the wrist, it's a chokehold, it's a death sentence. Feeling cornered, Japan makes it official. They join Germany and Italy, forming the Axis powers.
And this quote really gets you inside the heads of Japan's leaders. They felt completely boxed in, squeezed by these powerful Western nations. And from their point of view, which was being pushed hard by the military folks, they had 2 choices: either give up on their dream of an empire or fight. Fight to get the resources they believed they needed to even survive.
So with all that backstory, let's go back to December 7th. Japan's leaders made their choice. They decided to fight, and their plan was to land a single knockout punch on the US Pacific Fleet. And just like that, hundreds of Japanese warplanes filled the sky over Pearl Harbor. They caught the base completely, totally by surprise. Nobody was on high alert. Ammunition was locked away. The planes were all lined up, wingtip to wingtip, which, basically made them sitting ducks.
This quote from a sailor who was actually on the USS Arizona, it just hits you right in the gut. It really captures the pure chaos and terror of that moment. For the people there, this wasn't some far-off battle. It was a sudden, violent, personal hell.
The human cost was just staggering. In the span of a single Sunday morning, over 2,400 American servicemen were killed. And to put that in perspective, almost half of them, died on one ship alone, the USS Arizona.
And the physical destruction was also just mind-boggling.
188 U.S. aircraft completely wiped out. A lot of them never even had a chance to get off the ground. This was a massive, massive blow to American air power in the Pacific.
And here's maybe the most shocking part of all of this. All that death, all that destruction, it happened in just 90 minutes. 90. A swift, brutally efficient attack that would not only change the course of history, but also trigger a really powerful and really complicated response back here at home.
The attack had this immediate, massive impact on the American people. On one hand, it united the country for war like nothing else could. But on the other hand, it also unleashed this terrible wave of fear and racism, and that had devastating consequences for people right here in the United States.
So the very next day, December 8th, FDR goes before Congress. And this is so cool. You can actually see his first draft of the speech right here with his own handwritten notes. Look at that edit. He changes a date which will live in world history to a date which will live in infamy. Wow, that's so powerful. You can see him carefully choosing every single word to rally a nation that was still in shock. And this is such a critical point. America's reaction split into two totally different directions at the same time. On one side, you had this incredible wave of patriotism, with men lining up around the block to enlist. But on the other side, driven by fear and, let's be honest, racism, the government rounded up over 130,000 Japanese Americans, most of them U.S. citizens, and forced them into internment camps. It was this bizarre moment of incredible national unity and deep national shame, all happening at once. To really grasp the injustice of this, you have to hear the stories from the people who lived it. Take Richard Karasawa. He was only 14 years old when his family was ripped from their home and sent to live in a horse stable. A horse stable. And his memory of that smell, he said you could never get rid of it. That just puts the horrific reality of these camps into such sharp human terms.
You know, it took a long, long time, but the U.S. government did finally acknowledge what a terrible injustice this was. It wasn't until 1988 that President Ronald Reagan signed a bill that officially apologized and gave $20,000 in reparations to every person who survived the camps.
And all of this leaves us with a really important final question to think about. There is no doubt the attack on Pearl Harbor unified the country to go to war, but it also ripped the cover off some really deep-seated racism that led to this huge violation of civil rights. So when we look back, we have to ask ourselves, when a crisis hits, how do we balance security with justice? How do we protect ourselves without betraying our own values? That was the central dilemma then, and man, is it still relevant today.